Minjun Park sat in his car with the engine running. The dashboard clock showed 6:47 p.m. He had been parked across from the old warehouse for 3 hours now. His back hurt and his legs felt stiff. This was the boring part of his job that nobody talked about. Everyone thought undercover agents lived exciting lives full of action. But most days were like this. Waiting. Watching. Hoping something would happen. He worked for a federal task force that investigated organized crime. For the past 6 months, he had been following a man named Victor Chen. Victor owned several businesses in the city. On paper, everything looked normal. But Minjun's team believed Victor was moving illegal money through his companies. They just needed proof. Minjun's stomach growled loudly. He had skipped lunch because Victor had left his office early. Minjun had to follow him quickly. Now it was almost 7 and he had not eaten anything since breakfast. He looked at the warehouse again. Victor's car was still parked outside. The lights were on inside. Victor was probably going to be there for a while. There was a fast food restaurant 2 blocks away. Minjun had passed it several times during his surveillance work. He could go through the drive-thru, get food, and be back in 10 minutes. Victor would not go anywhere that fast. He always stayed at the warehouse for at least an hour when he visited. Minjun made his decision. He put the car in drive and headed to the restaurant. The bright signs came into view quickly. The place was called Burger Castle. It was a medium-sized chain that existed in most cities. Nothing special, but the food was decent enough. He pulled into the drive-thru lane. There were 2 cars ahead of him. Good. It would be quick. He looked at the menu board while he waited. He knew what he wanted. A double cheeseburger meal with fries and a cola, simple, fast, easy to eat in the car. The line moved slowly. Minjun checked his phone. He had a clear view of the warehouse from here. If Victor left, he would see the car move. Everything was fine. He was being careful like always. Finally, it was his turn. He pulled up to the speaker box. "Welcome to Burger Castle. What can I get for you?" The voice sounded young and bored. "I'll take a number 3 meal with a cola." "Make it a large," Minjun said clearly. "Number 3, large. Anything else?" "No, that's all. Your total is $12.45. "Pull forward, please." Minjun drove to the first window and paid with cash. He got his change and moved to the second window. A teenage girl with red hair handed him a drink and a bag. She did not smile or make eye contact. She just pushed the items toward him and closed the window. Minjun took the bag and drink and drove away quickly. He needed to get back to his spot. He had been gone for almost 8 minutes. He pulled back into his original parking space and checked the warehouse. Victor's car was still there, perfect. Nothing had changed. He opened the bag and reached inside. There was a burger wrapped in paper. He unwrapped it and took a big bite. It was warm and greasy and exactly what he needed. He ate half the burger in 3 bites. Then he reached into the bag for the fries. The bag was empty. Minjun looked inside again. No fries. He checked the passenger seat. Maybe they fell out? No, he looked in the bag one more time. Just the burger wrapper and napkins. No fries. He felt annoyed. He had paid for a meal. A meal came with fries. He had specifically ordered a number 3. Everyone knew what a number 3 included. How could they forget the fries? Minjun looked at his drink cup. It was the right size. Large. He checked the receipt that was stuck to the bag. It clearly said number 3 meal, large. He had been charged for the complete meal. But he only got part of it. He considered going back. But then he looked at the time. 7:03 p.m. He had been away from the warehouse for 15 minutes total. That was too long. He needed to stay focused on Victor. The fries were not important. The case was important. Minjun finished his burger and drank his cola. His stomach felt better, but he was still hungry. Fries were a big part of a meal. Without them, the burger was not enough. He tried to forget about it and focus on the warehouse. At 8:15 p.m., Victor finally came out. He locked the warehouse door and got into his car. Minjun started his engine and waited. Victor pulled out of the parking lot and turned left. Minjun followed at a safe distance. This was the important part. Where was Victor going now? But Minjun found it hard to concentrate. He kept thinking about the missing fries. It was stupid. It was just food. But it bothered him. He had paid for something and did not get it. That was not right. And the girl at the window had not even checked the bag. She just handed it over without caring. Victor drove to a parking garage downtown. Min-jun could not follow him inside without being noticed. The garage had cameras and limited spaces. If Victor saw the same car following him everywhere, the whole investigation could be ruined. Min-jun had to stop and let Victor go. He sat in his car, feeling frustrated. He had missed where Victor went because he had to get food, and he had not even gotten all of his food. The whole evening felt like a waste. Min-jun drove home around 9. He lived in a small apartment on the east side of the city. It was nothing fancy, just a place to sleep between workdays. He made himself a sandwich and sat on his couch. He kept thinking about the forgotten fries. It was silly to be this annoyed. He had dealt with dangerous criminals. He had been shot at twice in his career. He had gone undercover in situations where one mistake could get him killed. But somehow a teenager forgetting his fries made him more angry than any of that. Maybe it was because he had control over those dangerous situations. He was trained for them. He knew what to do. But this was just carelessness. Someone not doing their job properly. Someone not caring enough to check if the order was right. It was disrespect in a small way, and small disrespect often bothered people more than big problems. The next morning, Min-jun decided to go back to Burger Castle before work. He would talk to a manager. He would explain what happened. He had his receipt. They would fix it. They would probably give him free fries or a discount or something. Companies always tried to make things right when customers complained. He arrived at 9:30 a.m. The morning shift was working. Different people from last night. He walked inside and went to the counter. A middle-aged man with a name tag that said, Randy Manager, stood near the register. "Excuse me," Min-jun said politely. "I came through the drive-thru last night and my order was wrong. I paid for a meal but only got the burger. No fries." Randy looked at him with a blank expression. "Do you have your receipt?" Min-jun pulled it out and showed him. Randy barely glanced at it. "This was last night?" Randy asked. "Yes, around 7. We can't do anything about last night. You should have checked your order before you left." Min-jun felt his anger rising. "I did check it. When I got back to where I was going. I couldn't come back right away. I was working. Sorry, company policy. If you don't report it immediately, we can't help you. I'm reporting it now. I paid for something I didn't get." "That's not right," Randy shrugged. "I don't make the rules. If you want, you can call our customer service number. It's on the website." He turned away and started talking to another employee. The conversation was over. Min-jun stood there holding his receipt. He could not believe it. He was not asking for much, just the fries he had paid for, or even an apology. But instead, he got attitude and dismissal. Min-jun left the restaurant feeling something he rarely felt. Powerless. In his job, he had authority. He had a badge and a gun and the law behind him. But here, as a regular customer, he had nothing. Just a receipt and a complaint that nobody cared about. He sat in his car for a moment. This was ridiculous. He was letting a fast food problem get to him. He had real work to do. Important cases. Dangerous criminals to catch. He needed to forget about the stupid fries and move on. But as he drove to his office, Min-jun could not shake the feeling. Something about the whole situation bothered him deeply. It was not just about the food anymore. It was about how he had been treated. Like he did not matter. Like his complaint was an annoyance instead of a legitimate problem. Min-jun Park had spent 10 years as an undercover agent. He had learned to notice small details. Things that other people missed. And right now, something was telling him that this small detail mattered more than it seemed. 3 days passed. Min-jun tried to forget about the Burger Castle incident. He focused on his work. Victor Chen was still his main target. The team had assigned him to watch Victor's movements for another week. Maybe they would find something useful. On Thursday evening, Min-jun was doing surveillance again. This time he was watching a different location. Victor owned a car wash on the south side of the city. Min-jun had been sitting in a parking lot across the street since 4 in the afternoon. It was now almost 8. He was hungry again. There was a different fast food place nearby. This one was called Chicken Express. Min-jun decided to try it. Maybe he would have better luck this time. He drove through and ordered a chicken sandwich meal with fries and a lemonade. He paid at the first window. At the second window, a young man handed him a bag and drink. Min-jun drove back to his surveillance spot and opened the bag. The sandwich was there, He checked for fries. There were fries this time. Good. But when he bit into his sandwich, something was wrong. It was cold. Not just cool. Actually cold. Like it had been sitting somewhere for a long time. Min-jun unwrapped it completely. The bun was hard. The chicken was dry. This was old food. They had given him something that had been made hours ago. He took one more bite to be sure. Yes, definitely old. He could not eat this. It might make him sick. He was stuck in surveillance. He could not leave to go back and complain. He had to stay and watch the car wash. So he ate the fries and drank the lemonade. That was his dinner. Cold fries and a drink. He was still hungry when he went home that night. Min-jun started noticing a pattern. Over the next 2 weeks, he did surveillance at 6 different locations around the city. Each time he needed food. Each time he went to whatever fast food restaurant was closest. And each time something went wrong. At a place called Taco Town, they forgot his sauce. At another Burger Castle location, they gave him a small drink instead of the large he paid for. At a place called Pizza Quick, his order took 30 minutes when they said it would take 10. At a sub shop, they made his sandwich wrong even though he said his order very clearly. Min-jun was not the type of person who complained about everything. He understood that people made mistakes. Fast food workers had hard jobs. They got paid very little. They dealt with rude customers all day. He knew all of that. But this was too much. Every single place, every single time, something was wrong. He started keeping his receipts. At first he did not know why. It was just a habit from his job. Agents always kept records of everything. So he kept the receipts in his car. After 2 weeks he had 8 receipts. 8 different restaurants. 8 different problems. Min-jun spread the receipts on his kitchen table one night. He looked at them carefully. He started to see something interesting. 5 of the 8 restaurants had similar logos on the receipts. Small print at the bottom said managed by Apex Food Services. 3 different restaurant chains but the same management company. His investigative mind started working. This was probably nothing. But maybe it was something. Why would 5 restaurants from the same management company all have similar problems? Poor service, wrong orders, bad food quality. It could be coincidence. Or it could be a pattern. Min-jun opened his laptop. He searched for Apex Food Services. Their website looked professional. They said they managed over 30 fast food franchise locations in the city. They promised quality service and excellent customer satisfaction. Min-jun almost laughed. That was not his experience at all. He looked deeper into the company. He found their business registration. It was filed 4 years ago. The owner was listed as David Park, no relation to Min-jun, just same last name. There were 3 other executives listed. Min-jun wrote down all the names, then he did something he probably should not do. He ran the names through his agency's database. This was against policy. He was supposed to only use the database for official investigations. Looking up random fast food executives was not official work. But Min-jun was curious. His instincts told him to look. The search came back with no major criminal records. That was normal. Most people did not have criminal records. But then Min-jun tried a different search. He looked for any connections to people already in the system. People who were being investigated or watched. Something came up. One of the executives, a man named Thomas Wright, had a brother named Kevin Wright. Kevin was on a watch list. Nothing major. Just a person of interest in a fraud investigation from 2 years ago. The case had gone nowhere. Not enough evidence. But Kevin's name was still in the system. That was interesting, but not proof of anything. Lots of people had relatives who got in trouble. That did not make them criminals. But it was a connection, a small thread that might lead somewhere or might lead nowhere. Min-jun kept searching. He looked at the other 2 executives. One was named Lisa Chen. Wait, Chen? That was Victor's last name. Was she related to Victor Chen? Min-jun searched for any connection. He could not find one. Chen was a common name. Lots of people had it. Probably just coincidence, but Min-jun's mind was racing now. He was seeing patterns everywhere. Maybe patterns that did not exist. He needed to slow down. He needed to think clearly. Just because some fast food restaurants gave him bad service did not mean there was a criminal conspiracy. That was crazy thinking. He closed his laptop and went to bed, but he could not sleep. His mind kept working on the problem. Why did this bother him so much? Why was he spending his free time investigating fast food restaurants? The answer came to him around midnight. It was because of how they treated him. The managers who did not care. The employees who did not check orders. The company policies that protected the business but not the customer. It reminded him of something deeper. It reminded him of criminals who thought they could do whatever they wanted because no one was watching. In his job, Min-jun dealt with people who broke the law. They stole money. They hurt people. They thought they were smart enough to get away with it. And sometimes they did get away with it, because people did not pay attention, because people ignored small signs, because people thought little problems did not matter. Maybe the fast food thing was the same. Maybe these restaurants thought they could give bad service because customers would not do anything about it. People would just accept it and move on. Most people did exactly that. They complained to their friends but not to anyone who could fix the problem. They posted angry reviews online, but that was all. The restaurants did not care about online reviews. They only cared about money. Min-jun sat up in bed. He had an idea. What if he did care? What if he did not just accept it? What if he actually investigated this like it was a real case, not officially, just on his own time? As a personal project, it sounded crazy. He had real cases to work on, real criminals to catch, but this idea would not leave his mind. And he had some time. Surveillance work involved a lot of waiting. He could use that time to look into Apex Food Services. Just basic research. Just to see if there was anything there. The next morning, Min-jun called the Apex Food Services customer service number. He got a recording. It asked him to leave a message with his complaint. He left a message describing his experiences at their restaurants. He gave his phone number. The recording said someone would call him back within 2 business days. 4 days passed. No one called back. Min-jun called again. Same recording. He left another message. No one called back. That made him more suspicious. Every company called back angry customers. That was basic business. Unless they did not care. Unless customer service was not really their business. What if the restaurants were just a front for something else? Min-jun was getting ahead of himself. He needed facts. He needed evidence. He started visiting the Apex locations during his lunch breaks. Not to eat, just to watch. He sat in his car and observed. How many customers went in? How long did they stay? How busy were the drive-thrus? After a week of watching 5 different locations, he noticed something strange. The restaurants were never very busy. At lunchtime, there might be 10 or 15 customers. At dinner, maybe 20. These were not popular places. But they stayed open. They had staff. They paid for buildings and utilities and supplies. How did they make money with so few customers? Min-jun looked at the financial records. These were public for some businesses. Franchise restaurants had to report certain information. He found quarterly reports for 3 of the locations. According to the reports, they were making good money. Sales were steady. Profits were reasonable. But Min-jun had watched these places. The sales numbers did not match what he saw, unless they were lying about their sales. Unless the numbers in the reports were fake. But why would they do that? Why would a restaurant lie about making more money than it actually made? That did not help them. Usually companies lied the other way. They hid money to avoid taxes. Then Min-jun understood. They were not hiding money. They were cleaning it. Dirty money from somewhere else was being reported as restaurant sales. The restaurants were money laundering operations. Min-jun sat back in his chair. This was big. If he was right, this was actually big. But he needed more proof. He needed to be sure before he told anyone. Because if he was wrong, he would look foolish. He would look like an agent who got so angry about forgotten fries that he invented a conspiracy theory. Min-jun spent the next 2 weeks building his case. He worked on it during lunch breaks and after his regular shifts ended. He did not tell anyone what he was doing, not yet. He wanted to have solid proof before he said anything. He created a spreadsheet on his personal laptop. He listed all 30 Apex Food Services locations in the city. Then he visited each one, not to eat, just to count. He would sit in a parking lot nearby and count how many customers went in during 1 hour. He did this at different times. Morning, lunch, dinner, late night. The pattern was clear. These restaurants were not busy. Some locations had only 5 or 6 customers per hour. Even during lunch rush, the busiest location had maybe 30 customers. These were not successful restaurants. But according to their financial reports, they were doing great business. Min-jun calculated rough numbers. If a location had 30 customers during the busiest hour, and each customer spent about $12, that was $360. Maybe they had 3 or 4 busy hours per day. That was less than $2,000 daily. Maybe $40,000 per month. The reports showed these locations making twice that much. Where was the extra money coming from? He needed to see inside the business. He needed to look at their real records, not the public reports, the actual daily sales logs, the inventory orders, the staff schedules. But he could not just walk in and ask for those. He needed a reason to be there. Min-jun thought about his options. He could not use his real identity. If these people were criminals, they might recognize his name. He had been an agent for 10 years. His name had appeared in news articles about cases he solved. Some criminals knew who he was. He needed a cover identity, something that would give him access to the restaurants and their records, something that would not raise suspicion. He thought about different possibilities. Health inspector? No, that would make them nervous and hide everything. Customer complaints investigator? That might work, but was unusual. Most companies did not let investigators just walk in. Then he had a better idea. Efficiency consultant. Large companies hired consultants all the time. Consultants came in and studied how the business worked. They looked at everything: sales, staff, operations. Then they made recommendations to save money or increase profits. It was a normal thing. Businesses expected consultants to ask lots of questions and see all the records. Min-jun created a false identity. He had done this many times in his career. The agency had resources for creating fake backgrounds, but he could not use those resources for an unofficial investigation. He had to do this himself. He registered a small business online. He called it Peak Performance Consulting. It cost him $200 and took 2 days. Now he had a real company. It existed in legal records. If someone checked, they would find it. He made a simple website, just 1 page. It said, Peak Performance Consulting helped restaurants improve their efficiency and profits. It listed services like operations analysis, staff training recommendations, and financial reviews. It looked professional enough. He created a fake email address and business cards. He rented a small office space for 1 month using a mail service. Now he had a real address for his fake company. Everything looked legitimate. The hard part was getting hired. He could not just show up at the restaurants and say he was a consultant. Someone had to hire him, but who? The restaurants were owned by franchisees but managed by Apex Food Services. He needed to approach Apex. Min-jun sent an email to Apex Food Services. He used his fake consultant identity. He said his company had been hired by concerned investors who wanted to understand why some franchise locations were underperforming. He did not say which investors. He kept it vague. He said the investors wanted an independent review before making more investments. Could he schedule a meeting to discuss this? 3 days passed with no response. Min-jun sent a follow-up email. Still nothing. He was about to give up on this approach when his phone rang. It was a number he did not recognize. Hello, this is James Kim, Min-jun said. That was his fake name. James Kim. Common enough to be forgettable. Hi, this is David Park from Apex Food Services. I got your email about the consulting work. Min-jun's heart rate increased, but he kept his voice calm. Yes, thank you for calling back. Can you tell me more about these investors you mentioned? Who are they? This was the tricky part. Min-jun had prepared for this question. They prefer to remain anonymous at this stage. They're considering a significant investment in expanding the franchise network. But first they want to understand current operations. Standard due diligence. There was silence on the phone. David was thinking, deciding if this was real or suspicious. How much are they looking to invest? David asked. That depends on what my analysis shows. Potentially several million. But they want to see detailed operations first. Cash flow, inventory management, staff efficiency, the usual metrics. More silence. Then David said, okay, let's meet. Can you come to our office tomorrow at 2? Yes, I'll be there. Thank you. Min-jun hung up and took a deep breath. Step 1 was complete. He had gotten their attention. Now came the harder part. He had to convince them to give him access to everything. And he had to do it without making them suspicious. The next day, Min-jun dressed in a business suit. He wore glasses even though his vision was perfect. Small changes in appearance helped people remember the fake identity instead of his real face. He drove to the Apex Food Services office. It was in a commercial building downtown. Nice but not fancy. 5th floor. The office was smaller than he expected. Just a reception area and a few rooms behind it. This was not a huge operation. Maybe 15 employees total. The receptionist told him to wait. After 10 minutes, David Park came out. He was in his 50s. Average height. Expensive suit. He smiled, but his eyes were cold. Min-jun recognized that look. He had seen it in many criminals. They smiled and acted friendly, but they were always calculating, always watching. "Mr. Kim, good to meet you," David said, shaking his hand. "Thank you for seeing me on short notice." They went to a small conference room. David sat across from him. Another man joined them. David introduced him as Thomas Wright, their operations director. Min-jun remembered that name from his research. Thomas was the one whose brother was in the system. Min-jun gave his prepared presentation. He explained that the investors wanted to understand why some locations had lower foot traffic than expected. He said they wanted to know if better management could improve performance. He used business language. He talked about key performance indicators and operational efficiency and profit margins. He sounded like every other consultant they had probably met. David and Thomas asked questions. Who were the investors? Why were they interested in fast food? What kind of analysis would he do? Min-jun had answers ready. He stayed vague about the investors but specific about his methods. He would visit locations, observe operations, review sales data, interview staff, standard consulting work. How long would this take? David asked. 2 weeks for initial analysis, then another week to write the report. And you need access to our financial records? Yes, daily sales logs, inventory orders, staff schedules, bank statements if possible. The investors want complete transparency before they commit money. David and Thomas looked at each other. Min-jun could see them thinking. This was the moment. Either they would agree and he would get inside, or they would refuse and his plan would fail. "We need to discuss this internally," David said finally. "Can you give us a day?" "Of course. But the investors are hoping for a quick timeline. They have other opportunities they're considering." That was a subtle threat. Move fast or lose the money. It often worked with greedy people, and Min-jun was betting these men were greedy. "We'll call you tomorrow," David said. Min-jun left the office feeling uncertain. Maybe he had pushed too hard. Maybe they suspected something. He went home and waited. There was nothing else he could do. The next afternoon, David called. "We'd like to move forward. When can you start?" Min-jun wanted to sound excited but not too eager. "I can start Monday. I'll need access to 3 locations initially. I'll observe operations and review records. After a few days, I'll have questions for management." "That works. I'll send you an email with the locations and contact information. You'll report directly to me." "Perfect. I'll send a formal agreement for you to sign. Just standard consulting terms." Min-jun hung up and allowed himself to smile. He was in. He had access. Now he could see what was really happening inside these restaurants. But then a thought hit him. What if David ran a background check on James Kim? What if they looked deeper into peak performance consulting? His fake identity would not hold up under serious investigation. It looked real from the outside, but there was no history. No previous clients. No reviews, nothing. He had to move fast. He had maybe a week before they got suspicious. Maybe less. He needed to gather evidence quickly and get out. This was more dangerous than he had thought. If these people were laundering money, they were connected to serious criminals. Criminals who did not like people asking questions. Min-jun spent the weekend preparing. He bought a small camera that looked like a pen. He set up a secure cloud account where he could upload documents. He reviewed his fake identity story until he could tell it without thinking. He prepared for every question they might ask. On Monday morning, he drove to the first location. It was a burger castle on the east side, the same chain where he had first gotten a wrong order. Maybe even the same location. He was not sure. They all looked similar. The manager was waiting for him. Her name was Jessica. She was young, maybe 25. She looked nervous when Min-jun arrived. "Hi, I'm James Kim from Peak Performance Consulting. David Park sent me." "Yes," he called. "He said you'd be observing today." "That's right. I'll just watch how things work. Pretend I'm not here. Do everything normally." Jessica nodded, but she did not look comfortable. Having someone watch and take notes made everyone nervous. That was good. Nervous people sometimes revealed things they meant to keep hidden. Min-jun spent the day watching. He counted customers. He timed how long orders took. He watched how staff handled money. He took notes on everything. It all looked normal. Just a regular fast food restaurant with typical problems. Orders took too long sometimes. Staff forgot items occasionally. Nothing unusual. But then he noticed something strange. Around 3 in the afternoon, a man in an expensive car pulled up. He did not use the drive-thru. He parked and came inside. He did not order food. He went straight to the back office. He was there for about 5 minutes. Then he left with the envelope. Jessica acted like this was normal. Like it happened all the time. Min-jun asked casually, "Who was that?" "Just a vendor," Jessica said quickly. Too quickly. "What kind of vendor?" "I don't know. Management handles that stuff." Min-jun did not push, but he noted the time and description of the man. This might be important, or it might be nothing. He would keep watching. Min-jun visited 3 different restaurant locations over the next 5 days. He watched operations during different shifts, morning, afternoon, evening. He took detailed notes. He counted customers. He timed service. He photographed everything he legally could. At each location he saw the same pattern. The restaurants were not busy. Customer counts were low. But managers acted like everything was fine. They were not worried about low sales. That was unusual. Most restaurant managers worried constantly about sales. Their jobs depended on making money. But these managers seemed relaxed. Almost too relaxed. He also saw similar visitors at each location. Different people but same behavior. They would come in expensive cars. They would not order food. They would go to the back office. They would leave with envelopes or packages. Jessica had called them vendors. But vendors usually delivered things. These people took things away. On the 6th day, Min-jun asked to see financial records. He met with David Park at the main office. He requested daily sales logs for the past 6 months. Inventory purchase records, bank deposit slips, everything he needed to understand the money flow. David gave him access to some files. But not everything. The bank records were missing. David said they were with their accountant and would take a few days to get. Min-jun suspected that was a lie. David was stalling, deciding how much to show, deciding if Min-jun could be trusted. Min-jun reviewed the files he did get. The daily sales logs showed consistent numbers. Each location reported sales between $50,000 and $70,000 per month. That matched the public financial reports, but it did not match what Min-jun had observed. The customer counts were too low for those sales numbers. He did the math carefully. If a location served 20 customers per hour during busy times and maybe 10 during slow times, that was perhaps 200 customers per day. If each customer spent $12 average, that was $2,400 daily. About $70,000 monthly. The numbers could work, but only if the restaurants were busy all day. Min-jun had watched them. They were not busy all day. They were slow most of the time, unless the average purchase was much higher than $12. Unless customers were spending $30 or $40 per visit. But that was unusual for fast food. Most people spent $8 to $15, not $40. Min-jun needed to see actual transaction records. Individual receipts, credit card processing reports. Those would show real purchases. Those would show what customers actually spent. But David had not given him access to those files. He decided to ask. He called David. "I need more detailed transaction data. Individual sales, credit card reports, cash handling logs." There was a pause. "Why do you need that level of detail?" "The investors want to understand payment trends. How much is cash versus credit? What items sell best?" Standard analysis. Another pause. "I'll see what I can get you." That was a soft no. David was definitely hiding something. Min-jun needed a different approach. He needed to get information from inside the restaurants. From employees, people who worked there every day and saw what really happened. He went back to the first Burger Castle location. Jessica was working again. He asked if he could interview staff members. Just casual conversations about their work experience. Jessica agreed, but she looked nervous again. Min-jun talked to 5 employees during their breaks. Most gave standard answers. The job was okay. Management was fine. Nothing unusual. But one employee was different. Her name was Ji-woo. She was an assistant manager. She had worked there for 2 years. Jiwoo seemed troubled by something. Minjun could see it in her face. When he asked general questions, she answered normally. But when he asked about management and operations, she hesitated. She chose her words carefully. Like she wanted to say something but was afraid. Minjun took a chance. He said, "Can I talk to you privately? Off the record?" Jiwoo looked around. "Why?" "Because I think you've noticed things. Things that don't make sense. And I think you want to tell someone." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded slightly. "Not here. After my shift. There's a coffee shop 2 blocks away." They met 3 hours later. The coffee shop was small and quiet. They sat in a corner booth. Jiwoo looked scared but also relieved. Like she had been carrying a secret for too long. "What's really going on with this consulting thing?" she asked. "Are you actually a consultant?" Minjun had to make a quick decision. Tell her the truth or keep lying. If he lied and she found out later, she would never help him. But if he told the truth, she might panic and tell management. He chose truth. Partial truth. "I'm investigating possible financial irregularities. I think the company might be involved in fraud." "Who are you? Police?" "Something like that. But I'm not here to get employees in trouble. I'm looking at management." The people at the top, Jiwoo relaxed a little. "I knew something was wrong. I've known for a long time. Tell me what you've seen." She took a deep breath. "The numbers don't make sense. We report sales that are way higher than what we actually make. I do the daily deposits. I count the money. I know how much we take in. But the reports show different numbers. Much higher. How much higher? Maybe double. Sometimes triple. On a slow day, we might make $2,000. But the report will say 5,000 or 6,000. Who changes the numbers? I don't know. The reports are done by the main office. We just send them our real numbers. Then the reports come back different." This was exactly what Minjun suspected. The restaurants were reporting fake sales. Money from somewhere else was being mixed with real restaurant income. Classic money laundering. "What else have you noticed?" he asked. "Those men who come to the back office, they're not vendors. I don't know who they are. But they come once or twice a week. They bring bags, heavy bags. Jessica takes the bags to the safe. Then later, someone from the main office picks them up. What's in the bags? I think it's cash. Lots of cash. Way more than we make from customers. Have you told anyone about this?" Jiwoo shook her head. "Who would I tell? The owners? They're the ones doing it. The police? I don't have proof. And I need this job. If I accuse them of something and I'm wrong, I'll get fired. Maybe worse." Minjun understood her fear. "You're doing the right thing by telling me. I need your help to document this. Can you take pictures of the bags when they come in? Of the men who deliver them? That's dangerous. If they catch me, they'll know I'm watching them. I know it's risky, but I need evidence, real evidence. Not just what I observe from outside." Jiwoo thought about it. "What do I get from this? If you shut them down, I lose my job anyway. If they're arrested for money laundering, you'll be protected. You'll probably get a reward for helping, and you'll have a clear conscience." She nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll help. But you need to keep me safe. If they even suspect I'm helping you, I'm in danger. These are not normal business people. They're connected to dangerous people." "What do you mean?" "I've heard things. Overheard conversations. The men who bring the bags, they work for someone big. Someone in organized crime. This isn't just about fake sales reports. This is about washing money for criminals." Minjun felt a chill. This was bigger than he thought. He was not just investigating a small fraud operation. He was looking at a major money laundering network. And money laundering meant connections to drug dealing, illegal gambling, maybe worse. This was dangerous for both of them. "Do you know who they work for?" he asked. "I heard a name once. Victor something. Victor Chen, maybe. I'm not sure." Minjun's heart stopped. Victor Chen, his original target. The man he had been surveilling for 6 months. It all connected. Victor owned legitimate businesses as fronts. The fast food restaurants were another front. They all fed into his operation. This was the break he needed. But it was also a problem. If Victor was involved, this was much more serious. Victor had connections. He had money. He had dangerous people working for him. Minjun could not do this alone anymore. He needed official support. He needed his team, but first he needed more evidence. Just Jiwoo's statement would not be enough. He needed documents, photos, recordings, proof that would hold up in court. Can you get me copies of the real daily sales reports? The ones you send before they get changed? He asked. Maybe we keep copies in the office. I could photograph them with my phone. That would help. Also, try to get pictures of the men who deliver the bags. And if you can safely record any conversations, that would be even better. Jiwoo looked terrified but determined. I'll try, but if anything feels too dangerous, I'm stopping. I'm not dying for this. Absolutely. Your safety comes first. Just do what you can safely do. They exchanged phone numbers. Minjun gave her his real number, not his fake consultant number. He trusted her now. They were partners in this investigation. Over the next week, Jiwoo sent him information. Photos of daily reports showing real sales numbers, photos of men entering and leaving the back office, short video clips of cash bags being moved. It was all good evidence. But Minjun needed more. He needed to connect the cash directly to criminal activity. He needed to show where the money came from. He also continued his official consulting work. He had to maintain his cover. He visited more locations. He wrote notes. He asked questions. David Park was getting impatient. He wanted to see the consultant report. He wanted to know what Minjun would recommend to the investors. Minjun stalled. He said he needed more time. He said the analysis was complex. But he knew he could not stall forever. Soon David would get suspicious. Soon his cover would be blown. He needed to move faster. He needed to take a risk. He decided to break into the main office at night. The office had security cameras, but Minjun knew how to avoid them. He had done this kind of work before. He just needed to get to the file cabinets. He needed to find the real financial records, the ones David had not shown him. He planned it carefully. He would go on a Friday night when the office was empty. He would bring tools to pick the locks. He would photograph everything quickly and leave. In and out in 30 minutes. No one would know he was there. But the night before he planned to do it, Jiwoo called him. She sounded panicked. They know someone is asking questions, she said. Jessica got a call from David today. He asked if anyone had been acting strange, if any staff members seemed too interested in the business operations. What did Jessica say? She said no. But she was looking at me when she said it. I think she suspects me. You need to be careful. Maybe stop helping for a while. There's something else. I overheard Jessica on the phone after the call. She was talking to someone. She said the consultant might be a problem. They're suspicious of you too. Minjun felt cold. His cover was breaking down. He had maybe days before they figured out who he really was. He needed to act now, tonight. He needed to get the evidence and get out before they caught him. Thanks for warning me, he said to Jiwoo. Stop helping now. Delete our text messages. Pretend we never talked. I'll handle this from here. Be careful. These people are dangerous. Minjun hung up and started preparing. He would break into the office tonight. He would get what he needed. Then he would take everything to his supervisor. Even if his investigation was unofficial, the evidence would be real. They would have to act on it, but he was worried. If they suspected him, they might be watching. They might know he was coming. Minjun drove past the Apex Food Services office at 11 p.m. The building was dark. The parking lot was empty. Good. This was his chance. He parked 3 blocks away and walked back. He wore dark clothes. He carried a small backpack with his tools. The building had 3 entrances. Main door in front. Side door for deliveries. Back door for employees. Minjun had studied the building during his consultant visits. He knew the security camera locations. There were 6 cameras total, 4 outside, 2 inside in the hallways. The back door was his best option. The camera there had a blind spot. If he approached from the left side, he would be invisible for about 10 seconds. Long enough to pick the lock and get inside. He waited in the shadows and watched. No security guard patrol. The building relied on cameras and locks. That made it easier. He moved quickly to the back door. The lock was standard commercial grade. He had it open in 15 seconds. Inside, the hallway was dark. Emergency exit lights provided dim illumination. He knew the office layout. The file room was on the 5th floor. That was where David kept financial records. Minjun had seen the room during his visits but had not been allowed inside alone. He took the stairs instead of the elevator. Quieter. Less chance of triggering motion sensors. The stairwell was completely dark. He used a small flashlight to see the steps. His footsteps echoed slightly, but there was no one to hear them. The fifth-floor hallway had one security camera. Minjun stayed close to the wall and moved below its angle. He reached the file room door. This lock was more complex. It took him almost a minute to open it. His hands were sweating. Every second increased the risk of getting caught. The door clicked open. He slipped inside and closed it behind him. The file room was small. Metal cabinets lined the walls. A desk with a computer sat in the corner. This was where the real records were kept. The records David did not want him to see. Minjun started with the filing cabinets. He needed bank statements, real transaction reports, evidence of the fake sales numbers. He found files labeled by month and year. He pulled out January through June for the current year. He spread them on the desk and started photographing them with his phone. The bank statements showed large cash deposits. Every week, multiple deposits from different restaurant locations. But the amounts were strange. Some deposits matched what Minjun had observed as real sales, but other deposits were huge. $30,000 from a single location in one day. That was impossible for a slow fast food restaurant. He photographed everything. Then he moved to the next cabinet. This one had vendor contracts and payment records. Minjun found something interesting. Payments to companies with vague names. Mountain Services, LLC. River Distribution, Inc. Valley Consulting Group. These names meant nothing. They could be anything. He searched for information about these companies. He found incorporation papers in another file. All three companies were registered in the past 5 years. All three listed the same address. An address Minjun recognized. It was Victor Chen's office building. This was the connection. Victor owned these shell companies. They existed only on paper. They had no real business. Their only purpose was to move money. Money from criminal activities was paid to these fake companies. Then the fake companies paid the restaurants. Then the restaurants reported it as food sales. The money became clean. Minjun was taking pictures of these documents when he heard something. A sound from the hallway. Footsteps. Someone was in the building. He froze. His flashlight was off. He was in complete darkness. The footsteps came closer. They stopped outside the file room door. Minjun held his breath. His hand moved to his gun. He carried it even on unofficial investigations. Old habit, good habit. The door handle turned. The door opened. Light from the hallway spilled in. A figure stood in the doorway. Minjun could not see the face. Just a silhouette. The person reached for the light switch. The lights came on. Minjun and the person stared at each other. It was Thomas Wright, the operations director. His eyes went wide with shock. "What are you doing here?" Thomas demanded. Minjun's cover was blown. No point in pretending anymore. "I could ask you the same thing. Why are you here at midnight?" Thomas's shock turned to anger. "You're not a consultant. Who are you?" "Federal agent. And you're in a lot of trouble." Thomas's hand moved toward his jacket. Minjun drew his gun faster. "Don't. Put your hands where I can see them." Thomas raised his hand slowly, but he was smiling. Not a nice smile. A knowing smile. "Federal agent. That's interesting. Does your agency know you're here? Breaking into private property? Without a warrant?" Minjun realized his mistake. Thomas was right. This was an illegal search. Everything he found here could not be used in court. He had ruined his own evidence by breaking in without authorization. "This doesn't matter," Minjun said, trying to sound confident. "I have enough evidence already." This was just confirmation. Evidence of what? Restaurants doing business? There's nothing illegal here. Money laundering, shell companies, fake sales reports, connections to Victor Chen's criminal network. Thomas laughed. "You think you're smart, but you're just another cop who doesn't understand business. There's nothing illegal about our operations. We run legitimate restaurants. We follow all the laws. Then why are you here at midnight? Why did you come to the file room?" "Because David called me. He said the security system showed movement in the building. I came to check. Lucky I did. Now I find you stealing our private documents." Minjun's mind raced. How did the security system detect him? He had avoided all the cameras, unless there were other sensors he did not see. Motion detectors, maybe. Heat sensors. He had been careless. Put the phone down, Thomas said. Whatever pictures you took, delete them. That's not happening, then I call the police. You get arrested for breaking and entering. Your career is over. All your evidence becomes inadmissible. We walk free. Is that what you want? Minjun realized he was in a bad position. Thomas was right about everything. Minjun had broken the law. He had no warrant, no authorization. If this went to court, he would lose. Everything he had worked for would be wasted, but he could not let them win. He had come too far. He knew too much. These people were criminals. They were cleaning money for Victor Chen's operation. They deserve to be in prison. I'm leaving, Minjun said. Try to stop me and I'll arrest you for obstruction. On what grounds? You're the one breaking the law here. Minjun knew Thomas was right, but he had his gun. He had training. He could get out of this situation. He backed toward the door, keeping his gun pointed at Thomas. Stay where you are. Don't follow me. Thomas stayed still but kept smiling. You made a big mistake tonight. David will make sure everyone knows about this. Your bosses, the media, everyone, you're finished. Minjun left the room and ran down the hallway. He took the stairs fast. His footsteps echoed loudly, but he did not care about being quiet anymore. He just needed to get out. He burst through the back door and ran to his car. He drove away fast, checking his mirrors constantly. No one followed him. He made it home safely. But he knew he was in serious trouble. He sat in his apartment and looked at the photos on his phone. The bank statements, the shell company documents, the connection to Victor Chen. It was all there. Perfect evidence. Except he had obtained it illegally. No judge would accept it. No prosecutor would use it. He had failed. His revenge mission against the restaurant that forgot his fries had turned into a real investigation. But he had messed it up. He had let his emotions drive his actions instead of following proper procedure. He had become so focused on proving he was right that he forgot to do things the right way. Minjun almost deleted the photos. Almost gave up. But then he thought about Jiwoo. She had risked her job to help him. She had trusted him. She had given him information that could lead to a proper investigation. Legal evidence from a witness. That still mattered. He could not use his illegal evidence. But he could use what Jiwoo had gathered. The photos she took at work, the daily sales reports, her testimony about the cash deliveries, that was all legally obtained. A concerned employee reporting suspicious activity, that would hold up in court. He also had his observations from his consulting work. He had been invited into the restaurants legally. He had taken notes with permission. His count of customers versus reported sales showed clear discrepancies. That was legitimate evidence too. Minjun spent the rest of the night writing a report. Not for himself. For his supervisor. He documented everything from the beginning. The forgotten order that started his suspicions. The patterns he noticed. The research he did. His consultant cover. Jiwoo's information. His observations, he left out the break-in. That never happened. He did not have those photos. He did not know what was in those files. He only knew what he had seen legally. What he had been told by a witness. What he had observed with permission. The report was 20 pages long. It included copies of receipts from his bad orders, photos from his restaurant observations, text messages from Jiwoo with her photos and reports, analysis of public financial records compared to actual customer counts, connections between Apex Food Services and Victor Chen's network. It was not perfect. It was not complete. But it was enough to start an official investigation. Enough to get warrants. Enough to do this right. At 6 a.m., Minjun showered and dressed in his work clothes. He drove to the office. His supervisor, Agent Seo-Yun Kim, usually arrived early. He waited outside her office with his report. She arrived at 7. She looked surprised to see him. Minjun, what are you doing here so early? I need to talk to you. It's important. They went into her office. Minjun handed her the report. I've been investigating something on my own time. I think I found a major money laundering operation. It connects to Victor Chen. Seo-Yun looked skeptical. On your own time? What do you mean? I noticed something suspicious. I followed up on it. It started small, but it grew into something big. I think we need to open an official investigation. She started reading the report. Her expression changed from skeptical to interested to concerned. She read for 20 minutes without speaking. Minjun waited nervously. Finally, she looked up. This is incredible. but also incredibly reckless. You went undercover without authorization. You created a false identity. Do you know how dangerous this is? I know, but I found something real. The evidence is legal. I did everything by the book. That was a lie. But she did not need to know about last night. This witness, Jiwoo, is she reliable? Yes, she's genuinely concerned. She wants to do the right thing. She'll testify if we protect her. Seo-yun thought for a moment. If this is real, it's huge. But it's also a problem. You should have come to me weeks ago, before you went this far. Now you're personally involved. You can't be on the investigation team if we pursue this. I understand, but we have to pursue it. This is too big to ignore, she nodded. I'll take this to the director. We'll open an official investigation. But Min-jun, you're off this case. You're too close to it. And if anything you did was improper, it could compromise everything. I accept that. I just want these people caught. That's all I care about. Seo-yun stood up. Go home, take a few days off. Let us handle this from here. If we need your witness, we'll contact her properly, through official channels. Min-jun left the office feeling relieved but also frustrated. He had done all the work. He had found the evidence. But now he had to step back and let others finish it. That was hard. But it was the right thing to do. He drove home thinking about how this all started. A forgotten order. Missing fries. Bad service. Such small things. But they led him here. To uncovering a major criminal operation. Sometimes the smallest details mattered most. Sometimes paying attention to things other people ignored made all the difference. 3 days passed. Min-jun stayed home like Seo-yun ordered. He tried to relax, but it was impossible. His phone stayed silent. No updates, no calls. He did not know what was happening with his report. Maybe they decided it was not enough evidence. Maybe they thought he was wrong about everything. On the 4th day, Seo-yun called. Come to the office. We need to talk. Min-jun drove there immediately. When he arrived, Seo-yun was not alone. There were 5 other agents in the conference room. 2 from his team. 3 from Financial Crimes Division. Everyone looked serious. Sit down, Seo-yun said. We've been busy. She opened a laptop and turned it toward him. The screen showed surveillance photos. Men moving bags into restaurant back doors. The same men Min-jun had seen during his observations. But these photos were official. Taken legally by authorized agents. We started surveillance on all 30 Apex locations 4 days ago, Seo-yun explained. We've documented dozens of suspicious cash deliveries. Large amounts, way more than any restaurant normally handles. You were right. Something illegal is happening. Min-jun felt vindicated, but he stayed quiet and let her continue. We also interviewed your witness, Jiwoo. She's cooperating fully. Her testimony is solid. She's scared, but she's willing to testify in court. We've arranged protection for her. Another agent spoke up. His name was Agent Chen, no relation to Victor. We ran financial analysis on Apex Food Services. The discrepancies are obvious once you know what to look for. Reported sales are consistently double or triple actual sales. The extra money is coming from somewhere else. We tracked some of it back to shell companies owned by Victor Chen. We have enough for search warrants, Seo-yun said. Multiple locations. The restaurants. The main office. Victor Chen's businesses. We're executing them all at the same time. Tomorrow morning. 6 a.m. What do you need from me? Min-jun asked. Nothing. You're still off this case. But I wanted you to know. Your initial investigation made this possible. Without your report, we might never have looked at these restaurants. So thank you. But also, don't ever do something like this again without authorization. Min-jun nodded. I understand. The meeting ended. Min-jun went home again. But this time he felt better. The case was moving forward. They were going to catch these criminals. His forgotten fries had actually led to something important. The next morning, Min-jun could not stay home. He drove to the area near the Apex office. He parked several blocks away. He could not be part of the raid, but he wanted to see it happen. He wanted to know that it was real. At exactly 6 a.m., unmarked cars surrounded the office building. Agents in tactical gear entered through all 3 doors. Min-jun watched from his car. It took less than 10 minutes. Agents came out with boxes of documents. They brought out 5 people in handcuffs. David Park was one of them. Thomas Wright was another. Min-jun felt satisfaction. These men who had been so confident were now arrested. Their money laundering operation was finished. All because Min-jun had paid attention to a wrong order. The raids continued all day. 15 restaurant locations, Victor Chen's office, several private homes. By evening, the news channels were reporting it. Major money laundering ring broken. Federal agents arrest 23 in organized crime operation. The details were vague, but the arrests were real. Min Jun watched the news coverage at home. They did not mention his name. That was good. Undercover agents needed to stay unknown. But they mentioned that a concerned citizen had provided initial information. That was Jiwoo. She deserved the credit. 2 weeks later, Seo Yoon called him again. The case is solid. We have financial records, witness testimony, surveillance footage. The prosecutors are confident they can convict everyone involved. This is going to trial. What about Victor Chen? Min Jun asked. He's claiming he knew nothing about the money laundering. He says Apex was independent. He just owned some of their shell companies for legitimate business purposes. He has expensive lawyers. They're making it difficult. But we can prove the connection? We're working on it. It's complicated. But we'll get him eventually. These things take time, Min Jun understood. Major cases always took time. Justice was slow, but it was thorough. Victor might avoid charges now, but the investigation would continue. Eventually, they would find enough evidence to arrest him too. 1 month after the raids, Min Jun received a letter. It was from the federal prosecutor's office. Inside was a commendation letter. It thanked him for his investigation work and his dedication to justice. It mentioned that his efforts had directly resulted in dismantling a multi-million-dollar criminal operation. It was signed by the head prosecutor and the regional director of his agency. Min Jun put the letter on his refrigerator. It was a small piece of paper, but it meant something. It meant his work mattered. It meant paying attention to details was important. It meant sometimes the smallest injustices led to discovering the biggest crimes. 3 months after the raids, Min Jun was doing surveillance again. A different case, different criminals, but similar work, sitting in his car, watching, waiting. He got hungry around dinner time. There was a fast food restaurant nearby, not Burger Castle, not any of the Apex locations. Those had all been closed down after the raids. This was a different chain, a place he had never been before. Min Jun went through the drive-thru. He ordered a meal. Burger, fries, drink, the same order that had started everything months ago. He paid at the first window. At the second window, a teenager handed him a bag and cup. Min Jun pulled into a parking space. He opened the bag slowly. He looked inside. The burger was there. He reached in further. The fries were there too, hot, fresh, the right size. Everything he ordered was in the bag. The order was correct. He sat there for a moment. Such a simple thing. Getting what you paid for. Most people never thought about it. They just expected it. But Min Jun had learned that small things mattered. Small problems could reveal big problems. Small injustices could lead to discovering major crimes. He ate his meal and thought about everything that had happened. It all started with forgotten fries. Such a stupid thing to get angry about. But that anger had driven him to investigate. That investigation had uncovered a money laundering network. That network had connections to organized crime. And now 23 criminals were facing federal charges. His supervisor had been right to criticize him. He had taken too many risks. He had gone too far without authorization. He had even broken the law by breaking into that office. He was lucky Thomas Wright had not pressed charges. Lucky the agency had decided not to discipline him. They recognized that his heart was in the right place even if his methods were wrong. Min Jun had learned important lessons. Follow procedure. Get authorization. Work within the law. But also trust your instincts. Pay attention to details. Don't ignore small problems just because they seem unimportant. Sometimes small problems were symptoms of much bigger issues. He finished his meal and drove back to his surveillance position. The case he was working now was different, but the skills were the same. Watch carefully. Take notes. Look for patterns. Trust that the details would tell a story eventually. 6 months after the raids, the trial began. Min Jun was not required to testify. His role had been at the beginning of the investigation. The official case was built by other agents using proper methods and legal warrants, but he attended the trial whenever he could. He wanted to see justice happen. Jiwoo testified on the 3rd day. She was nervous but clear. She explained what she had seen. The cash deliveries, The fake sales reports, the suspicious visitors. Her testimony was powerful because she was honest. She admitted she had needed the job. She admitted she had been scared to report what she saw. But she had done the right thing eventually. The jury responded to her honesty. David Park's defense was weak. He claimed he thought everything was legitimate business. He said he did not know where the extra money came from. He suggested that individual restaurant managers might have been cheating without his knowledge. But the financial records proved he knew. His signature was on documents that authorized the fake sales reports. He had personally set up the shell companies with Victor Chen. He was deeply involved. Thomas Wright tried a different defense. He claimed he was just following orders. He said David made all the decisions. Thomas just did what he was told. But surveillance footage showed Thomas personally meeting with the men who delivered cash. He was not just following orders. He was an active participant. One by one, the other defendants were exposed. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, witness testimony, surveillance footage, documents from the office. It all pointed to the same conclusion. These people had created a sophisticated money laundering operation. They had used fast food restaurants as a front. They had cleaned millions of dollars for organized crime networks. The trial lasted 6 weeks. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Then they returned with verdicts. Guilty on all counts for David Park. Guilty on all counts for Thomas Wright. Guilty verdicts for 19 other defendants. Only 2 people were acquitted. Minor players who could prove they genuinely did not know about the illegal activities. The judge scheduled sentencing for 1 month later. Min Jun attended that too. David Park received 12 years in federal prison. Thomas Wright received 10 years. The others received sentences ranging from 3 to 8 years. Justice was served, but Victor Chen was not in the courtroom. He had avoided charges in this case. His lawyers had successfully argued that he was not directly involved in the restaurant operations. He owned some shell companies, but that was not illegal by itself. The prosecutors promised to continue investigating him. They would build a separate case. But that would take time. Min Jun left the courthouse feeling satisfied but not completely happy. They had caught most of the criminals, but the biggest criminal was still free. That bothered him. Victor Chen had been his original target. 6 months ago he had been surveilling Victor's warehouse, and he would still be trying to catch Victor. This case had been a detour. A successful detour, but still not the main target. 2 weeks after sentencing, Seo Yoon called Min Jun into her office. She had news. Victor Chen was arrested this morning. Different charges. Drug trafficking. We've been building a case for months. Your information about the money laundering helped us understand his network better. We knew where to look. We found evidence of his drug operation. He's going to prison. Min Jun felt a wave of relief. Finally, after all this time, Victor was caught. The man who had started this whole thing. The man Min Jun had been watching that night, he got the wrong order. If Min Jun had not gone to get food that night, none of this would have happened. He would not have gotten angry about missing fries. He would not have investigated the restaurants. He would not have discovered the money laundering. And they might not have caught Victor. Everything was connected. Every small action led to bigger consequences. That wrong order at Burger Castle had started a chain of events that ended with major criminals going to prison. Min Jun had learned that lesson well. 1 year after everything began, Min Jun drove past the location where the first Burger Castle had been. The building was empty now. The signs were gone. The drive-thru was closed. The parking lot was empty. The restaurant chain had filed for bankruptcy after the scandal. No one wanted to eat at a place connected to organized crime. Min Jun did not feel bad about that. Legitimate businesses had nothing to fear from honest investigations. The restaurants had been criminals from the start. They deserved to fail. He continued driving until he found a different fast food place, a small local restaurant, not a chain. He went inside and ordered the same meal he had ordered that first night. Double cheeseburger, large fries, large cola. The owner herself prepared the food. She handed him the bag with a smile. Thank you for your business. Let me know if everything is okay. Min Jun opened the bag right there at the counter. Burger, fries, all correct. He smiled back at her. It's perfect. Thank you. He sat at a table and ate his meal. It tasted better than any fast food he had eaten in years. Maybe because it was made with care. Maybe because it reminded him that most businesses were honest. Most people tried to do things right. The criminals were the exception, not the rule. Minjun's phone buzzed. A text from Seo-yun. New case. Possible embezzlement at a construction company. Need you to do initial surveillance. Start Monday, he texted back. I'll be there. This was his life. This was his job. Finding criminals, gathering evidence, building cases, making sure justice happened. Sometimes it started with big, obvious crimes. Sometimes it started with small, forgotten fries. But it all mattered. Every investigation mattered. Every criminal caught made the world a little bit safer. Minjun finished his meal. He threw away his trash. He walked to his car feeling good about everything. His revenge mission was complete. Not revenge in a petty way. Not revenge by complaining or making a scene. Revenge in the best way possible. By uncovering the truth. By bringing criminals to justice. By making sure that people who thought they could break the laws and get away with it were proven wrong. Sometimes justice came from unexpected places. Sometimes it started with something as simple as a forgotten order. But when someone paid attention, when someone cared enough to ask questions, when someone refused to let small injustices slide, that was when real change happened. That was when criminals got caught. That was when the system worked the way it was supposed to work. Minjun drove away from the restaurant thinking about his next case. A new investigation.
New criminals.
New challenges. But the same goal. Find the truth. Gather evidence. Make sure justice prevailed. That was his mission. That was his purpose. And it all started because someone forgot to put fries in his bag.